The statue behind me commemorates one of the most important, yet mysterious, local heroes here in Sugarlandia. He went by the name Papa Isio, a legendary revolutionary leader and also a revered babaylan or shaman. The spirit of Papa Isio is one of the main inspirations of Don Papa Rum. It was his deep connection to the land, his lifelong fight for independence, and also his dedication to indigenous customs and beliefs that Don Papa Rum continues to emulate at its core. But despite his historical significance and importance, the life of Papa Isio is still shrouded in myth and mystery. There's so little information, in fact, that even the statue behind me, built to commemorate him, doesn't accurately portray what he really looked like or who he was. So who was Papa Isio? I'm Ben Scharlin, and I'm Don Papa Rum's man on the ground here in Sugarlandia. And in this episode, we'll paint a fuller picture on the man, the myth, and the legend of Papa Isio. Now, before we get into the origins of Papa Isio, it's good to know the context of the world in which he grew up in. And in order to do that, it's important that we go over a brief history of the sugar industry here in the island of Negros.
Around the 1840s, an international port was completed in the city of Iloilo on the neighboring island of Panay. This opened the entire region to new economic opportunities. A British consul and businessman stationed in Iloilo by the name of Nicholas Loney quickly saw the potential in growing sugar on an industrial scale on the island of Negros. He set up a successful money and equipment loaning company for affluent families interested in creating large haciendas, or sugar plantations. This jump-started the sugar boom and the era of the hacienderos, sugar barons with the title of Don or Doña, who lorded over the production of sugar and ownership of the land. Migrant workers flooded to the island in search for work and opportunity in the ever-expanding sugar industry.
This is how Dionisio Magbuelas, later to be known as Papa Isio, found himself on the island of Negros.
They were attracted by the offer of the Spanish government for immigrants to come to Negros because there are many lands here that have no owners. Sin propietario, they call it. Nobody owns the land, so much land in Negros.
Originally from the island of Panay, him and his family migrated here with dreams of clearing their own land and finding work and opportunity.
His family settled on a piece of land in the town of Himamaylan, but later lost the land to the more powerful sugar barons who operated under the Spanish system of land ownership through registration and titles. It was easy for the rich hacienderos to take the land away from the masses who lived by the pre-colonial land rules, which dictated that anyone could own land as long as they could make the land productive.
Land ownership is in accordance with the Spanish law, the Justinian law, which says that you own the land that you claim as long as you have the title to the land that is yours. In the ancient concept that was handed down through the generation, which says that a person can own the land only if he can cultivate it. If he cannot cultivate, he cannot own the land.
The loss of his family's land was one of the first major circumstances that ignited Magbuelas' resentment against the Principalia, or the elite class, and the Spanish colonizers. Envisioning a world where the land was equally distributed to the poor, and also returning back to the pre-colonial laws of land ownership, would become one of the main pillars of Papa Isio's spiritual and military movement later on.
In 1896, Dr. Jose Rizal, the national leader of the independence movement, was publicly executed by the Spanish, inflicting a huge blow for the prospects of an independent Philippines. Jose Rizal's death certainly hit Magbuelas hard, as it did for all Filipinos hopeful for national independence. In fact, revolutionary groups across the country, including Papa Isio's, would yell, "Viva Rizal!" when charging into battle.
The first public manifestation of Papa Isio was in Kabangkalan, where his followers gathered and they shouted, "Viva Rizal! Viva Filipinas Independiente!" and "Viva la Revolucion!"
But it was a third event that would finally change the course of Magbuelas' life forever. It is reported that Magbuelas had gravely injured a Spanish man during a violent altercation. He was forced to flee deep into the mountains to evade capture by the Spanish authorities who were in pursuit of him as a wanted man.
It was here, deep in the mountain regions of Negros, hiding in the jungle, evading Spanish authorities, that Magbuelas, soon to become Papa Isio, would find refuge with a revolutionary/spiritual group of Babaylans.
The next phase, we find him joining the Babaylans of Camartin, known as Dios Buhawi.
But before we move on, it would be beneficial for us to go through a brief history of who the Babaylans are and what they believe in. Babaylan is the local term for shaman here in the Philippines. Babaylans were intrinsic to the fabric of pre-colonial Philippine society, playing numerous important roles within the community and enjoying a status on par with nobility. In fact, when the local datu or ruler was gone, leadership of the community was handed directly to the Babaylan. These shaman practiced the mystical arts, which allowed them to communicate with the spirits of the dead and the spirits of nature. In fact, the highest ranking among them, the Dalaganan, are said to be able to manipulate nature itself. It is to be noted that in pre-colonial times, the Babaylan were primarily women, revered in society as high priestesses. But as the centuries of Spanish colonialism aggressively transformed the Philippines from a society based on matriarchal mysticism into one dominated by patriarchal Catholicism, the Babaylan were persecuted as witches, or as the Spanish referred to them, Dios Dios, or false gods. Obviously, they were forced into hiding, and their presence and their influence started to dwindle.
But under the surface, the Babaylan persevered, passing down their mystical arts through the generations and nurturing their hatred against all colonizers. By the late 19th century, a resurgence of revolutionary Babaylan leaders emerged. One of the most notorious went by the name of Dios Buhawi, the direct translation, whirlwind god. He was a Dalanganan, the highest order of Babaylan, and was said to have powers over nature and to be able to create weather. He commanded a group of about 2,000 called the Pulahanes, or those who wear red, for the red bands and cloth they donned into battle.
It makes complete sense then that Dionisio Magbuelas, hiding in the mountains and evading capture from the Spanish, and also nurturing a hatred towards the colonizers and the elite class, would find Dios Buhawi and his spiritual revolutionary group of Babaylans to be kindred spirits. It was here that he would join the group and start to excel in the arts of guerrilla warfare and Babaylanism.
It was there that Papa Isio learned about the concepts of revolt, independence, freedom, and choice.
Known to be naturally talented, articulate, and charismatic, when Dios Buhawi was finally killed in battle, Magbuelas was the one who was able to reunite the Pulahanes and become their new leader. Around 1896, he ascended to the highest order of Babaylan to become a dalanganan and was anointed with the title of Papa, or Pope, amongst his people.
The highest ranking in the Catholic Church is the Pope. And so he claimed that power. That's where he became known as Papa Isio.
Papa Isio proved to be such an effective guerrilla leader that he quickly developed a lore around him that impressed both his followers and his foes. To the local communities of poor and powerless, he rose to the status of folk hero. Much like Robin Hood, he was the champion of the common folk as he stole from the rich and gave to the poor. While in the eyes of the colonial powers, first the Spanish and then the Americans, he was considered to be a bandit and a wily outlaw. On November 5th, 1898, the revolutionary forces in Negros overwhelmed the Spanish garrison and declared independence from Spain. The Hacendaro leadership of this revolution gave Papa Isio the title of military chief of La Castellana. They did this in order to keep him as an ally, knowing full well that although they shared a common enemy in the Spanish, that Papa Isio's convictions ran even deeper against the upper class, their class. This divide in class ideology would eventually be the beginning of the end for Papa Isio's dream of independence. For even though the Spanish were gone, the leaders of the new independent government in Negros, heroes from the Hacendaro class, such as General Aniceto Lacson and General Juan Araneta, were already making deals with the Americans. And this was something Papa Isio could not tolerate.
America needed allies in the Philippines. And he would like to make Negros as a showcase of what it is to be under American rule. When Negros agreed to this, Papa Isio resigned from his position and went back into the mountains and declared war against the Negros government.
Even after the ink had dried on the Treaty of Paris on December 10th, 1898, and after all of the military and political leaders of the Philippines had already surrendered the country, Papa Isio continued to fight.
While all the other revolutionary leaders in the Philippines in 1904 had already surrendered to America and took their oath of allegiance, Papa Isio refused all attempts for him to surrender. He stood by his conviction that in 1904, the American government, through the Philippine Commission, issued a law, the Brigandage Law, that anybody who continues to take up arms against the United States are declared no longer revolutionaries, but bandits.
The walls were closing in on Papa Isio. Officially, under American rule, banditry was punishable by death. It was the police chief Gil Montilla of Isabela, whose family Papa Isio worked for as a young man, who finally convinced him to come out of hiding and surrender to the Americans. Gil Montilla told Papa Isio that in exchange for his surrender, he would receive full amnesty, a lifetime pension, and peace for his people. With no more options, Papa Isio emerged from the mountains and entered the town. He was greeted by thousands of people who were there to witness the legend and celebrate him as a hero. A grand feast was held in his honor, and he went to sleep that evening fed and full. The next day, he would wake up in a prison cell, bound and shackled. He was transported to a prison in Bacolod City, where he was swiftly convicted as a bandit and sentenced to death. Papa Isio would not be executed, however. General James Smith, now the American Governor General in the Philippines, had spent years trying to capture Papa Isio to no avail. In some way, Papa Isio must have gained General Smith's respect in all those years of evading capture, because it was General Smith who commuted his sentence from death to life in prison. In 1911, Papa Isio died in the old Bilibid prison in Manila.
The names that deserve to be etched in the collective memory of our history are often the ones that are left out. Papa Isio is one of those names. Despite his importance in the narrative of this nation, his story has largely been lost and untold. The small statue erected to commemorate him is a bit inaccurate. The books meant to be written about him to tell his story have gone unwritten, and the lessons to be learned from his amazing life have gone unlearned. But despite this, we know that his life held so much gravitas that the legend of Papa Isio continues to inspire. He was a legendary revolutionary leader and babaylan. He believed, like so many of the other great men and women throughout history, that the magic that lives within the human soul requires freedom and independence in order to thrive. And he was willing to fight and die for those beliefs even when no one else was willing to do the same. His story deserves to be told. And hopefully, in time, more people will be able to discover the legend of Papa Isio, a legend that lives on in us all.
I'm Ben Scharlin, and I'm Don Papa Rum's man on the ground here in Sugarlandia. And until next time, Sugarlandia out.